If you're like me, you're looking for hardware that makes things more fun and makes you more creative. Maybe you have a full-time job. I mean, I hope you do, because hardware gear isn't exactly cheap these days. So you don't have a lot of time, because this is a hobby after all. And so you're trying to find short pockets of time in between all the real work in your life to get at least 5 minutes of focus on that new song idea. So when you actually do make music, you hope new gear will help you have more fun, get more inspired, so you can ultimately make better music faster. But that's 3 wishes in one, and does that unicorn even exist? I feel like I should be able to answer that question because I've gone through a lot of different gear over the years. My friend and Signwave partner in crime has often felt frustrated because I keep obsessing about gear, looking for that perfect workflow. He's the kind of person that probably would be happier if he just worked in the DAW, because that's how he got into this hobby, whereas my journey actually started on an old Roland W30 workstation. So again, is there any gear out there that actually inspires you, that you can pick up and use for maybe just 5 to 15 minutes at a time, and that helps you generate ideas that you didn't think you had in you? The answer is yes. The Syntakt does all of this for me. Is it the perfect groovebox? No, not really. And I'll get to some of the reasons for that later in this video. But with that said, this is by far the most fun groovebox I've ever owned. I'm gonna share 5 things that I love the most about the Syntakt. Each of these things have completely changed how we make music. And to a large degree, they've also changed how we think about hardware versus software, which I'll explain a bit later in this video. Let's start with my favorite Syntakt feature, Ctrl+All. Sometimes people complain that Elektron gear is overpriced, and in all honesty, if you compare feature specs with other grooveboxes from, let's say, Roland or Innovation, they're kinda right. But if I had to point to one thing that makes the Syntakt all worth it, it would be Ctrl+All. So what is that then? Well, rather than talking about it, let me show you. Alright, so here's a couple of patterns from a song that we haven't yet published on the channel, but it's called Waiting, and it goes like this. This might sound familiar, by the way, and I'll get to that later on as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Ctrl+All to transform this into something different. Alright, here we go. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to change the bass line from a 4-bar pattern to a 1-bar pattern. I'm gonna try some other things too. I'm gonna change the kick to some sort of tone and stuff. Yeah, something like that. Alright. So at this point, yeah, I'm not just doing Ctrl+All. I'm doing some other things as well, but I'll explain soon. Ctrl+All again. So now we ended up with something that sounds quite different from what we had originally. And just as a reminder, here's how it sounded like originally. So we took this and we went to here instead. In my opinion, this sounds pretty cool. It sounds, you know, it's like what my fellow Swede Bo Beats might call vibey. So what happened here? Well, that's literally the question we've asked ourselves several times when we used this feature and stumbled over things we didn't even think was possible. So the concept of Ctrl+All is actually very simple. Normally you twist a knob to change one parameter on the selected track. But if you hold down this track button and then twist the same knob, you will instead change that parameter on all 12 tracks at the same time. That sounds pretty simple, right? But it's a true game changer. I don't know of any other piece of hardware or software that does anything like this. And even though you could program something like this in your favorite DAW, you would never get to this level of immediacy. It's just so cleverly designed and it invites you to explore. And that's the key here, because when you explore, you often end up with happy accidents. And this feature alone leads to so many happy accidents and new ideas, it's just ridiculous. Here's another transformation that I ended up with literally 10 minutes ago as I was just about to prepare for recording this video. And here's another one that I also thought was kind of cool. I really like this. I don't know what I'm going to use this for. Maybe this will end up in the original song somehow. I haven't really decided.
It sounds pretty vibey, I think.
But then I took this and I turned it into this. Which again, is not too far off from the original song. It's just a slightly different take on it. And this is the power of Ctrl+All, is it keeps generating new ideas or new variations of the same idea. And suddenly, like, you just twist a few knobs and you stumble over something, and it makes the whole music more interesting. Ctrl+All is like this remix generator. Case in point, the reason why this pattern might sound familiar to you is because we've been playing around with what turned into this latest jam on this channel, which is called Still Waiting. By the way, the project file that I'm using for this demo is up on our Patreon, so feel free to check that out if you want to explore this on your own. We also share the full Ableton live sets for all of our published jams, so it's definitely worth considering joining that community if you want to examine our work in a bit more detail. And I don't know, you can just keep going. You can just keep changing things, and suddenly you might end up with something else, like what I'm doing right now. One more thing I want to show is, while you're holding down the track button, you can quickly just press no if you mess up in that moment, and it will take you back to just where you were before you pressed the track button. So like now I'm messing up deliberately and I press no. See? Now I'm back. So I can mess things up and press no before releasing the track button. And then I can still use func no to go back to the save point. So you have sort of two levels of undo. All right, I think I proved my point. Ctrl+All is awesome. All right, the second thing I love about the Syntakt is called parameter lock. This is something that has truly changed how we make music. And I'm not just saying that, literally, it's changed how we make music. It's great for ear candy type of things, for one thing, but it can also be used to emulate a bunch of extra LFOs by adding movements to your track. By the way, if you like this video, please subscribe to our channel for more content like this in the future, and hit the like button, please. Appreciate it. So, parameter locks. At the core, it's a feature that locks certain parameter settings to a specific step or note in the sequencer. The way I'm thinking of showing this is, let's create a simple ARP. I'll program this from scratch so you can follow the whole process. And then I'll add some movement to that ARP using parameter locks. I'll start with the three key notes and just program those three in. You know the drill. Just find the notes, press them in like this. All right. So now I'm going to save some time and copy these three trigs to the other locations. Yeah, that sounds good. And now I want to make some variations here. Hold on. Yeah. And then copy it one more time. Where are we? Yeah. And the last note over. I can't speak and program at the same time. All right, this is good. So now, let me just quickly show. So there are two LFOs going on. One is the pulse width modulation, the other one is vibrato, let's say. And that's it. Those are the two LFOs, right? But this is where it gets interesting, because now I can add more variations per step. Let's say, for example, I want to add some panning on alternate notes. I can just do like this, hold down the trigs, I twist the panning knob, and it affects those trigs that I held down. Sorry, let me copy this so I can go back to this point. Yeah, let's do some more. Let's do some detuning on the second oscillator on step 7. Let's try some Let's just mess things up a little bit to create a bit more variety or movement to this. See? Listen. It's starting to sound a little bit different already. Some bit crush. A noise maybe. I don't know, I'm sort of running out of ideas. Let's do some more radical panning on step. Oh, and you don't need to program this per step if you don't want to. You can also record these feeds live, so sort of like an automation lane in the DAW. So you hold down the copy and play button at the same time, and it takes you into recording mode. And now I can twist knobs while it's running, and they will record that into each respective step. But keep in mind that I'm overriding some of the stuff that I just did, but that's fine. So you get the point. Now I have a pattern that sounds kind of interesting, or more interesting, let's say. Some movement on the envelopes. Just a little bit movement. Try to create some more variety. So, yeah, what else? I can't really come up with anything else. It's just a fun workflow. Like, you experiment. You hold down a trig, you twist some knobs, and you see what happens. And sometimes you stumble over something that you didn't even have in mind. And so in that sense, it's a close cousin to Ctrl+All. It's sort of a generator of happy accidents. And remember, this is where we came from. This was the starting point. A bit more sterile, a bit less interesting. I'm back to this again. Yeah, I mean, that's the point. That's the whole thing. I could keep going, but I think you get the point. So parameter locks just enables you to do more, and it frees you from the limitation of just having 2 LFOs. You can do far more. So in practice, you have something like 50 LFOs, not just 2. Number 3 on the list of what makes this thing so great is something that makes it work really well in a production environment. Elektron calls this feature Overbridge, and what it means is that you can live record individual stems for each track, plus the analog effect blocks, plus the main channel and the effect channel. And you can record that all at once onto your computer or directly into your DAW. We have really embraced this hybrid workflow now because it opens up so many other creative opportunities, and it really takes the Syntakt to the next level. And don't get me wrong, the Syntakt is excellent as a standalone groovebox and live performance instrument. But we're producers first and foremost, so we want to take that instrument-like output and turn it into something that we can release and that sounds as great as we had intended. So our workflow for Syntakt productions is that I spend some time with the Syntakt fully in standalone first to quickly build out the track. For the most part, I do this in bed or on the couch until the track starts to feel like a complete song. Throughout this phase, my partner and I collaborate via feedback sessions. We meet every week in the studio and we sit down together to work things out, and we bring new ideas and we tweak things here and there. But at some point, the song is ready to be recorded into the DAW. And that's when we bring out the camera gear and we get ready for a recorded live performance. So when you watch our jam videos on this channel, you see and hear the jam that was recorded live on camera, but you hear the final results from taking that recording and mixing it in Ableton Live. So just to show you the difference real quick, let me play out a part of a new song that we're still working on that is unmixed, as in coming straight from Syntakt. So the first 8 bars is from Syntakt, and then I'll switch over to show you the mix in progress, let's say, that we are having in Ableton Live. So this is straight from Syntakt. There's a bit of glue compression from Ableton though, so just keep that in mind. And now I'll switch into the mixed version. So it's, in the end, it's not night and day difference, but it's enough to make a difference. And the point is, when it comes to the old DAW versus DAW-less question, Overbridge brings the best of both worlds. You get all the fun from the hands-on workflow, and you get to mix things properly in the end. Also, the face of mixing in the DAW is actually another creative platform with lots of exciting opportunities, like adding new effects to tracks, or even chopping up some of those tracks. So we don't think of the DAW phase as a boring phase where you focus on just EQ and leveling to get things to sit right in the mix. tracks, we think of it as an opportunity to bring out the very best of our creative work. Maybe one of the tracks needed a bit more lush reverb, for example, or maybe the other track needed some chorus to sound thicker and warmer. By having the raw material recorded into the DAW, you suddenly have an almost endless palette of possibilities. But since the song and its structure is more or less done, you don't get stuck in trying to tweak the song itself. Instead, you simply focus on identifying the things that will make this go from good to great. This approach allows us to move more quickly from a song embryo to a finished production because it takes some of the edge out of that strive for perfection in the sketching phase. I don't have to worry too much about getting the bass level right or whether that transient on the snare is a bit too harsh, because I know that I can fix all of those things later instead. So it takes away some of the pressure when you really just want to be creative and have fun. Oh, and another shameless plug to our Patreon community is that we offer our members free feedback and consulting on mixes and other works in progress. So if you're looking for some pointers or advice to help you level up, we can definitely help. Is Overbridge perfect though? No. And I do have one major wish. If Elektron is paying attention, I would really like to see them spit out stereo instead of mono stems. I understand that there might be technical limitations to how much data you can transfer on the USB cable, but I think you should be able to transfer just the mono stems, and then all you need to do is just pass along the panning data per track. That way, the Overbridge software could use that to recreate the stereo panning on the resulting audio files on your computer. It seems like it shouldn't be that hard. Number 4 on the list of things I love about the Syntakt is the analog effect block. Let me show you an example with drive cranked all the way up to 11 on a high-pass filter. And on this track, the analog bus is dedicated to the lead only. So this is a new song that we're currently working on, and because we cranked the drive up to 11, it can now sound like this. Which is so cool. Hear that? I don't know about you, but I just love these type of sounds. I mean, listen to that. So clearly in the final jam, track 11 is going to be the focal point. But we need to finish the song first. But yeah, so there's a lot of interesting filters on the analog effect block. In this case, we're using the high-pass filter. But we're actually moving the filter on track 11. So that is what then is routed into the effect block. Let me show you how track 11 sounds like without being routed into the analog effect block. So now it's without its magic, let's say. And I mean, it still sounds cool. Don't get me wrong, it's a great analog oscillator, but it doesn't have the drive anymore. I mean, in my ears, this sounds so much better. I'm sorry, I'm getting carried away here. I find using the Syntakt to be almost a meditative process sometimes. It's just so easy to get lost in a moment, because this thing invites you to play with it. But let's carry on. Perfect segue, actually, because the final thing on the list of things that I love about the Syntakt is the overall immediacy in the workflow. There's so much to say about this, and I compared it to Super Street Fighter in a previous video, and what I meant with that is that it can be a bit hard to understand at first, but once you learn a few shortcuts, you can get really fast on this device, to the point where it starts to feel like a proper instrument. Rather than just talking about the workflow, I'll show it for you instead. I already showed you how you can use the copy-paste function to quickly create an ARP. And just for the fun of it, I routed that ARP through the analog effect block to crank things up a notch. Let's try to expand this slightly tedious ARP to something that begins to sound more like a song embryo. And I can't guarantee that this will end up sounding great, but even if it sounds silly, hopefully you've still learned something about the Syntakt workflow here. So let's give it a go. I'll start with the bass. That's kind of what I always do. Yeah, so something like this. And now let's do a kick. Let's just do a quick 4 on the floor. Keep it simple. Here's a little trick I discovered. You change the transit on the 2nd and 4th beat to turn it into a sort of a kick and snare combo. It's very simple if you want to just quickly get the groove going. And of course we need a hi-hat, always on track 12. Not always, but most of the time. Some conditional trigs to spice the hats up a bit maybe. What else? Some rolls. See how easy it is to get going. It's already starting to sound a bit more interesting, right? I mean, is it a slam dunk? No, but it's like, it's good. I'm kind of getting the vibe now. We need a melody. Now, this sound is kind of awful, but let's go with it. Let's not worry about sound design right now. Okay, this is the wrong scale. Well, I like that. Yeah, let's record that in. Let's just go. This is the point of the Syntakt. Yeah, and it's quantized, so it should, in theory, look good. Yep. Actually, let's make a copy of this track. Copy the sequence. All right, so now we have 2 tracks with the same note. That's not what we want. We want to change the notes on the next track to... There you go. That's it. That's it. All right, let's just finish out the pattern here. Yeah, this is it. This is it. All right, I couldn't help myself. I spent another 15 minutes working on the thing, and I'm actually starting to like it now. It's starting to feel like a song now. I mean, it's just so easy and fun. I changed the nature of the analog. It's more plucky now. I like it. There we go. Right? Playing with Ctrl+All. I love it. I even made a B section. I'm not sure how to use this, but here we go. This is so fun. Like literally, we created a new song in 15 minutes. Plus, I don't know, 20 minutes? Anyway. I actually kind of want to end this video now. I want to make music instead. So let's wrap this up. Oh, one thing that is totally worth mentioning. The sounds here are obviously far from final. I literally just picked what was already on the pattern, which is just another copy of the song that I played in the beginning of the video. But this is a key part of the process for me at least, which is to not worry so much about sound design in the sketching phase. In fact, to not worry about details so much. Just keep going, even if the sounds aren't exactly right or the snare isn't hitting the way you want it to hit. It doesn't really matter because you can worry about those details later. This is of course completely up to you, and sometimes you might want to start in the opposite order and do some sound design before you start to lay out some patterns. But I can't count the times that I've spent in front of a DAW and feeling like all of my inspiration just getting sucked out of me as I'm browsing for that perfect snare drum. It's literally the worst thing I know is preset browsing. I almost never browse for presets on the Syntakt because I know I can dial in something that is close enough to what I want in a matter of seconds. So rather than thinking I need a snare drum and then getting lost in your long sample library of 1,000 useless snare drums, on the Syntakt you basically just pick one of the snare drum machines and then you dial it in until it's roughly what you had in mind, and then you move on. And in a way, this is more limiting because many of the sounds are distinctly Syntakt and maybe not what you had in mind. But on the other hand, it's extremely liberating because it makes you less obsessed with finding that perfect snare drum. And by the way, there is no perfect snare drum. Believe me, I've tried. So instead, on the Syntakt, you quickly dial in something that's good enough for now, and then you move on. And this means you are far more likely to actually finish the song idea rather than getting stuck in an endless loop of browsing for snare presets. Alright, so those are the 5 things I absolutely love about the Syntakt. In the end, this level of playfulness, creative inspiration combined with a super fast workflow has really changed how we think about the role that hardware gear plays in the music making process. Before I got the Syntakt, I often struggled with the tension between hardware and software. There's a lot of positive things to say about hardware in general. It's tactile, you get a specific feeling when you're using them. It's like interacting with an instrument, and that in itself can lead to new musical ideas. But there's a lot of negative things about it as well. For one thing, this is an expensive hobby, but more importantly, hardware doesn't automatically make you faster. In many cases, the opposite is true. And other times, it's just more convenient to use the DAW where you have access to just about anything with a simple mouse click. But with the Syntakt, there really isn't a lot of tension anymore. The Syntakt is without a doubt a faster way for us to make music. It's more fun, and it sounds great in the end. Back to one of the first questions, is the Syntakt perfect? No, it's not perfect, not by a long shot. I miss polyphony, I miss sampling, I miss stereo stems, I miss more effects like chorus and more forms of distortion. I would love to see an arpeggiator, and I would love to see some other things as well. But in the end, the Syntakt has to be one of the most awesome synth-based grooveboxes that have ever been produced. It's by far the groovebox that I'm having the most fun with. Thank you, Elektron, for designing it. And no, this video is not sponsored by Elektron. I purchased the Syntakt with my own hard-earned cash in the used market. By the way, that's my general advice to anyone exploring hardware. Buy used gear, because then you can have fun exploring this thing without worrying too much about the financial implications, because you can actually sell it again at roughly the same price if this thing ends up not being for you. I hope you found this video useful in any way. If you did, please check out our other content and consider subscribing if you want to see more of this type of stuff in the future. We will be exploring the MPC and the Push 3 standalone this year, and we have about 10 unreleased songs already across those platforms that we'll publish here throughout the year. And we also have about 10 other Syntakt songs that have yet to be published too, so much more on this channel to come. Until then, I hope you're having fun making music. That's really all that matters in the end. Thanks for watching.